Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We wanted to ask a few questions about the Olympics and all the changes in law and regulations that are happening and the effects that they're going to be having on us,
Right.
On the public. So I was hoping you could talk to me about the recent bylaw amendments by the City of Vancouver in relation to freedom of speech.
Yeah, sure. The original set of bylaws from the City of Vancouver was unbelievably bad in terms of freedom of speech. It suggested the only signs you could hold on a huge section of downtown were signs that celebrated the Olympic Games, that increased the positive feeling around the Olympic Games, and a number of other very draconian provisions about what people could and couldn't hold in terms of signage in many areas of the city. They were sued by two activists with the support of the BCCLA, and in response to that brought in the second generation of Olympic bylaws. So now you're allowed to hold whatever signs you want. There's still problems with the bylaw in that if you want to get an exemption from the sign bylaw to put up a sign around the Olympics, the only exemptions that are allowed are for celebratory signs, so they have to be positive signs around the Olympic Games. Aside from that, there are issues around not being able to use amplification equipment, not being able to sell anything, and not being able to engage in any commercial expression around Olympic venues, even though it's public property. So there are a number of things we have concern with, but the most egregious portions of it have been dealt with.
What about things like pamphlets and media being distributed to people?
As long as your materials are non-commercial, there's no issue anymore, thanks to the lawsuit.
Just one more question. What strategy would you propose to reverse the security crackdowns that are being placed in the city?
The only thing that turns back security crackdowns is community organizing. So a strong community where people get together and meet and discuss the issues and meet with decision makers, whether politicians or police, hold demonstrations, flyer, educate people through the media and otherwise. That's the only thing that works in turning back security crackdowns.
But no specific bylaw that prohibits it, that makes it illegal.
No, in Canada you've got free speech on public property, and we would anticipate that that would stay the same over the Olympic period, but there have been all these attempts to limit it, so we're not assured at all that that's going to remain the case over the Olympics. That's right.
What about the recent bylaw amendments in relation to rights of assembly?
In relation
Rights
to?
of assembly?
There are definitely issues in that the bylaws create Olympic live sites over traditional areas of assembly. So David Lamb Park, there's a parking lot at Beatty Street that used to be a staging area for protests historically right near the library, which are essentially closed access now. The city's treating them almost like private property, bringing in new rules regulating conduct on that public property. So in terms of assembling on these pieces of public property, your rights are now restricted.
And outside of the specific designated areas, will there be arrest detentions if people decide to go out and assembly and protest?
Well, historically in Canada, we've seen mass arrest scenarios in Quebec City, around APEC, these large public demonstrations when they take place, assuming that that's actually what's going to happen around the Olympics. But if a large public demonstration does take place, we'll be prepared. We're preparing for a mass arrest scenario with lawyers to do legal defense, with observers to document what happens. So we're prepared for that scenario, and we are expecting mass arrests if demonstrations do take place.
Outside of that?
Yes, outside the venues.
Okay.
Yep.
In regards to the changes in city bylaws restricting civil liberties for the Olympics, do you think there will be any residual limitations on individual rights and freedoms after the games are done?
Yes, we see the Olympic Games as being a precedent, both for the Olympics internationally, how the Olympics are hosted, what's appropriate, what's not, but also locally and nationally for Canada. How do we as Canadians interpret our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and balance that with the security elements around a mega event, an international event? So when the next international event comes to Canada, a lot of the police officers who are responsible for the Olympics will go to that event, and they'll take all the things they learned and that they did in Vancouver over there, and other cities will come to Vancouver and they'll say, well, what laws did you put in place? What initiatives did you bring in around the Olympics? And so that we can use them for our event.
And in terms of all these changes in regulation, do you think they will be long-lasting, or will they be completely just eliminated once the games are?
Many of the regulations will be gone after the Olympics. The issue is what happens in the next event that comes forward, the next exceptional scenario, because it becomes easier each time. We're worried about the slippery slope, where once you do it once, the first time is difficult politically. But then as you do it again and again, people get accustomed to it and they're okay with it, and that's what we're really worried about.
So moving forward, past the Olympics, we would like to know what communities like this one could do to begin getting back some of what's being lost with this changes.
Well, that's just the thing, you know. I think we have lost some ground in terms of our relative freedom, our ability to express ourselves, the tolerance that the public has for public discourse and freedom of expression, assembly, these kinds of things. So it will take a lot of work on the part of the artists, on the part of the people who talk in public through the media, through other venues, to work back to the point where we were at, even just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, in terms of public liberty issues. And we all have our work cut out for it, but it is a part of an education process around the importance of democratic freedoms. Why is free expression important? Why does free expression guarantee our security and not undermine it? And doing that education through art and through education.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.